I never thought I'd fall in love on the job, but life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. The night it all began, I was suiting up for what seemed like a routine call, another art gallery fire in downtown Raleigh. As I climbed into the truck, my buddy Jake elbowed me. "Bet it's just some pretentious installation gone wrong," he chuckled. I rolled my eyes but couldn't help smirking. We'd seen our fair share of avant-garde mishaps. Little did I know this call would change everything. As we pulled up to the Starlight Gallery, flames were already licking at the windows. The acrid smell of burning canvas filled the air. My team and I burst through the doors, the heat hitting us like a wall. "Hello? Fire department," I shouted, my voice muffled by my mask. That's when I saw her, a blonde woman trapped behind a fallen beam, desperately trying to salvage paintings. Our eyes met through the smoky haze, and for a moment, time stood still. "Ma'am, we need to get you out of here," I yelled, snapping back to reality. I maneuvered around the debris, my heart pounding. As I reached her, she stumbled, coughing violently. Without hesitation, I scooped her into my arms. "I've got you," I assured her, feeling her grip tighten around my neck. We made our way out, dodging falling embers. Once outside, I set her down gently as the paramedics rushed over. She looked up at me, her green eyes wide with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice hoarse from the smoke. "Just doing my job, ma'am," I replied, trying to ignore the flutter in my chest. As they whisked her away to the ambulance, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. I watched her go, wondering if I'd ever see her again. The investigation into the fire kept me busy for days. Something about it didn't add up. The sprinkler system had mysteriously malfunctioned, and the security footage was conveniently corrupted. My gut told me there was more to this story. A week later, I found myself back at the gallery, now a shell of its former self. As I surveyed the damage, a familiar voice caught my attention. "Officer Johnson?" I turned to see her standing there, the woman from the fire. Up close, she was even more breathtaking than I remembered. "It's Luna, actually," I corrected, feeling suddenly self-conscious in my uniform. "And you are?" "Harper Rogers," she smiled, extending her hand. "I wanted to thank you properly for saving my life, and our art collection." As we shook hands, I felt a spark of electricity between us. "Gosh, get it together, Luna," I chided myself. "Just glad I could help," I managed, trying to maintain my professional composure. "How are you holding up?" Harper's smile faltered slightly. "It's been challenging. The gallery was my life, but we're determined to rebuild." I nodded, admiring her resilience. "Well, if there's anything I can do to help with the investigation, don't hesitate to ask." "Actually," she said, her eyes lighting up, "we're having a charity auction next week to raise funds for the restoration. Would you like to come?" As my personal guest, of course. My heart skipped a beat. Was she asking me out? No, surely not. She was probably just being polite. "I'd love to," I heard myself say before I could overthink it. As I left the gallery that day, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the beginning of something big. Little did I know just how right I was, or how complicated things were about to become. The weeks following the fire were a whirlwind. Between the ongoing investigation and my regular shifts, I barely had time to breathe, let alone think about Harper. But as I packed my bag for a weekend trip to a coastal art exhibition, her face kept flashing in my mind. I'd taken a rare weekend off, hoping to clear my head and maybe gain some insight into the art world. The gallery fire had left me with more questions than answers, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something crucial. As I waited for my rideshare, I scrolled through my phone, reading the latest news about the Starlight Gallery. The charity auction had been a success, but rumors of financial irregularities were starting to surface. I made a mental note to look into it when I got back. The car pulled up, and I climbed in, muttering a distracted greeting to the driver. It wasn't until I heard a familiar voice that I looked up. "Luna?" What a surprise. My heart skipped a beat as I met Harper's green eyes in the rearview mirror. She was sitting in the front passenger seat, looking as stunning as ever in a flowing sundress. "Harper, wow, what are the odds?" I stammered, feeling a blush creep up my neck. She turned in her seat, flashing me a dazzling smile. "Are you headed to the Coastal Visions exhibition too?" I nodded, still trying to process this unexpected turn of events. "Yeah, I thought it might help me understand the art world a bit better." You know, for the investigation. Well, aren't we lucky? Harper said, her eyes twinkling. We'll have plenty of time to chat during the drive. And chat we did. For the next 3 hours, we talked about everything from our favorite books to our childhood dreams. Harper's passion for art was infectious, and I found myself hanging on her every word as she described the emotions different pieces evoked in her. It's not just about what you see, she explained, gesturing animatedly. It's about what you feel, how it resonates with your soul. I couldn't help but think that Harper herself was a work of art. The way her eyes lit up when she spoke, the graceful movement of her hands. Gosh, Luna, get a grip, I scolded myself. You barely know her. As we neared our destination, the conversation took a more serious turn. How's the investigation going? Harper asked, her voice tinged with concern. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. Honestly, it's frustrating. Something doesn't add up, but I can't put my finger on it. Harper nodded sympathetically. I know what you mean. Things at the gallery have been tense. There's whispers of financial problems, but nobody wants to talk about it openly. I leaned forward, my interest piqued. Financial problems? Like what? She hesitated, biting her lip. I'm not sure, just rumors really. But if you'd like, maybe we could discuss it more over dinner tonight? My heart rate quickened. Was this a date, or just a professional meeting? I decided to play it cool. That sounds great, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'd love to hear more about what's going on behind the scenes. As we pulled up to the exhibition hall, Harper turned to me with a mischievous grin. You know, Luna, for someone who claims not to understand art, you have quite an artistic soul yourself. I laughed, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. Is that so? Absolutely, she nodded. The way you see the world, always looking for the truth beneath the surface. That's what art is all about. We stepped out of the car, and I found myself standing closer to her than strictly necessary. The sea breeze tousled her blonde hair, and I had to resist the urge to brush a stray strand from her face. Well then, I said, offering her my arm. Shall we go appreciate some art together? Harper linked her arm with mine, sending a thrill through my body. I thought you'd never ask. As we walked into the exhibition, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was stepping into something much bigger than just an art show. The investigation, the gallery's troubles, and my growing feelings for Harper. It all seemed to be converging into something I couldn't quite grasp yet. But one thing was clear. My life was about to get a whole lot more complicated. And as I glanced at Harper, her profile illuminated by the setting sun, I realized I wouldn't have it any other way. I never thought I'd become a regular at an art gallery, but here I was, making up excuses to visit Starlight for the 3rd time this week. The investigation into the fire had hit a dead end, but I couldn't bring myself to close the case, or maybe I just couldn't bring myself to stop seeing Harper. Back again, Luna? Harper's eyes sparkled as I walked in. I'm starting to think you have a hidden passion for abstract expressionism. I chuckled, trying to ignore the flutter in my stomach. What can I say? I'm a woman of many mysteries. Truth was, I couldn't care less about the paintings. It was Harper who drew me back, like a moth to a flame. Every visit I learned something new about her. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was concentrating, how her laugh sounded like music. As we walked through the gallery, Harper explaining the nuances of each piece, I found myself watching her more than the art. The way her hands moved as she spoke, the passion in her eyes, it was mesmerizing. Luna? Harper's voice snapped me back to reality. You okay? You seemed lost in thought? I blushed, caught off guard. Sorry, I was just appreciating the artistry. A knowing smile played on her lips. The artistry, huh? And which piece were you admiring so intently? Our eyes met, and for a moment the air between us crackled with unspoken tension. I opened my mouth, ready to say something, anything, when my phone buzzed, breaking the spell. Damn, I muttered, checking the message. Duty calls. I've got to head back to the station. Harper nodded, a flicker of disappointment crossing her face. Of course. The city needs its hero. As I turned to leave, she caught my arm. Luna, there's an event here next Friday, a small gathering after hours. Would you like to come? My heart raced. I'd love to, I said, perhaps a bit too eagerly. The week dragged by, each shift at the firehouse feeling longer than the last. My colleagues noticed my distraction, teasing me about my sudden interest in culture. Since when does Luna Johnson give a damn about paintings? Jake laughed during a coffee break. I shrugged, trying to play it cool. Just broadening my horizons? Finally, Friday arrived. I spent an embarrassingly long time getting ready, settling on a simple black dress that I hoped struck the right balance between professional and alluring. The gallery was transformed when I arrived. Soft jazz played in the background, and the lights were dimmed, casting a warm glow over the artwork and the small crowd of well-dressed patrons. And there was Harper, radiant in a deep green dress that made her eyes shine. She beamed when she saw me, making her way through the crowd. "Luna, you made it!" She leaned in, kissing me on the cheek. The scent of her perfume made my head spin. "Wouldn't miss it," I managed, hoping she couldn't hear how fast my heart was beating. As the evening wore on, I found myself relaxing, even enjoying the discussions about brush techniques and color theory. Harper stayed close, her hand occasionally brushing mine as she guided me through the exhibition. The crowd thinned as the night progressed, until it was just Harper and me, standing before a large abstract piece. "What do you see?" she asked softly, her shoulder touching mine. I looked at the swirls of color, trying to find meaning in the chaos. "Honestly, it reminds me of a fire, the way the colors blend and move. It's like flames dancing." Harper turned to me, her eyes wide. "That's exactly what the artist intended. You have a good eye, Luna. Or maybe I just have a good teacher," I said, meeting her gaze. The air between us seemed to thicken. Harper stepped closer, and I could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes. "Luna," she whispered. A crack of thunder interrupted her, making us both jump. Outside, rain began to pour, drumming against the gallery's skylights. Harper laughed, breaking the tension. "Looks like we're stuck here for a while." "I can think of worse places to be stranded," I said, smiling. We spent the next hour talking, laughing, and sipping wine as the storm raged outside. As Harper told me about her dreams for the gallery's future, I found myself falling harder with every word. Finally, the rain slowed to a drizzle. "I should probably head home," I said reluctantly. Harper nodded, walking me to the door. As we stood there, neither of us quite ready to say goodbye, a final rumble of thunder echoed in the distance. And then, as if moved by some unseen force, we both leaned in. Our lips met, soft and hesitant at first, then with growing passion. It was everything I had imagined and more, sending sparks through my entire body. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, Harper rested her forehead against mine. "I've been wanting to do that for weeks," she admitted. "Me too," I whispered, pulling her in for another kiss. As I drove home that night, my lips still tingling, I felt like I was floating. But a nagging voice in the back of my mind reminded me of the complexities of our situation, the ongoing investigation, the rumors of financial troubles at the gallery. I pushed the thoughts aside, focusing instead on the memory of Harper's kiss. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew one thing for certain: I was falling in love, and there was no going back now. The weeks following our kiss were a whirlwind of stolen moments and secret smiles. Harper and I fell into a rhythm, stealing kisses in the quiet corners of the gallery and sharing lingering glances across crowded rooms. It felt like we were in our own little bubble, untouched by the outside world. But reality had a way of bursting that bubble when we least expected it. I was at the station, going over some reports, when the news broke. The headline flashed across the break room TV: "Local art gallery embroiled in financial scandal." My heart dropped as I saw Harper's face on the screen, her expression a mix of confusion and distress as she pushed past a crowd of reporters. "Damn," Jake muttered beside me. "Isn't that your artsy friend?" I nodded, unable to speak as I turned up the volume. Allegations of embezzlement and misuse of charity funds at the Starlight Gallery. While no charges have been filed, sources close to the investigation suggest that the gallery's recent fire may have been an attempt to cover up financial irregularities. The room spun around me. This couldn't be happening. Not to Harper, not to us. I grabbed my phone, dialing Harper's number with shaking hands. It went straight to voicemail. "Harper, it's me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I just saw the news. Call me back, please. I'm here for you, whatever you need." The next few days were chaos. Harper was unreachable, and the media circus around the gallery grew wilder by the hour. I threw myself into work, desperate for a distraction, but my mind kept wandering back to her. It was nearly midnight when my phone finally rang. Harper's name flashed on the screen. "Harper, are you okay?" I asked, relief flooding through me. "Luna." Her voice was thick with tears. "I'm so sorry, I didn't know, I swear I didn't know." "Slow down," I said, grabbing my keys. "Where are you? I'm coming to you." 20 minutes later, I was knocking on Harper's apartment door. When it opened, my heart broke. Her eyes were red and puffy, her hair a mess. Without a word, I pulled her into my arms. "It's going to be okay," I murmured, stroking her hair. "We'll figure this out together." We spent the night talking, Harper pouring out everything she knew about the gallery's finances. It became clear that while she wasn't directly involved in any wrongdoing, her boss had been siphoning money from charity events for years. "I should have noticed," Harper said, her voice hollow. "I was so focused on the art, on making a difference, I missed what was happening right under my nose." I took her hand, squeezing it gently. "This isn't your fault, Harper. You were used just like everyone else." As the sun began to rise, casting a soft glow through the windows, Harper turned to me, her eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and fear. "Luna, I think I'm falling in love with you," she whispered, "but I understand if this is too much. If you want to walk away, I won't blame you." My heart swelled. Despite everything, despite the chaos swirling around us, one thing was crystal clear. "Harper Rogers," I said, cupping her face in my hands. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm falling in love with you too, and we're going to get through this together." Our lips met in a kiss that felt like a promise, a lifeline in the storm we were facing. The next few weeks were a blur of police interviews, media scrutiny, and sleepless nights. Harper's boss had disappeared, leaving her to face the brunt of the public's anger and suspicion. Through it all, I stood by her side, fielding questions from my colleagues and defending her to anyone who would listen. It wasn't easy. There were whispers at the station, sidelong glances from people who wondered if I was compromising my integrity for a pretty face. But I knew Harper. I knew her heart, her passion for art and for helping others. And I knew without a doubt that she was innocent. One rainy afternoon, as we sat in my living room going over documents for what felt like the millionth time, Harper suddenly stood up. "I can't do this anymore," she said, her voice breaking. "I can't keep fighting when it feels like the whole world is against me." I rose to meet her, taking her hands in mine. "Hey, look at me. You are not alone in this fight. I believe in you, Harper, and we will clear your name, no matter how long it takes." She looked at me, her green eyes searching mine. "Why? Why are you still here, Luna? Your career, your reputation. You're risking everything for me." I pulled her close, resting my forehead against hers. "Because you're worth it. Because what we have is worth fighting for. And because I love you, Harper Rogers. All of you, scandal and all." A small smile tugged at her lips. "You love me?" "With every fiber of my being," I replied, sealing the declaration with a kiss. That night, as we lay tangled in each other's arms, the world outside faded away. For a few precious hours, there were no scandals, no investigations, no doubts. There was just us, two hearts beating as one, finding solace in each other's embrace. As I drifted off to sleep, Harper's head resting on my chest, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. The storm wasn't over, but we had found our anchor in each other. And that, I realized, was the greatest masterpiece of all. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow over Harper's sleeping form. I watched her for a moment, marveling at how peaceful she looked. A stark contrast to the chaos that awaited us outside these walls. As if sensing my gaze, Harper's eyes fluttered open. "Morning," she murmured, a small smile playing on her lips. I leaned in, kissing her softly. "Morning, beautiful." For a blissful moment we lay there, tangled in sheets and each other. But reality had a way of intruding, even in our most intimate moments. Harper's phone buzzed incessantly on the nightstand. With a sigh, she reached for it, her brow furrowing as she scrolled through the notifications. "More reporters," she said, her voice tight. "And, gosh, the comments on these articles. Luna, they're calling me a thief, a fraud." I pulled her close, wishing I could shield her from the world's cruelty. "They don't know you like I do. We'll get through this, Harper, I promise." As we got dressed, preparing to face another day of scrutiny and accusations, I couldn't help but notice the toll it was taking on Harper. The sparkle in her eyes had dimmed, replaced by a constant wariness. "Maybe I should just leave town for a while," she said suddenly, pausing in the middle of buttoning her blouse. "Let things die down." My heart clenched at the thought. "Is that what you really want?" Harper shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't know what I want anymore. I can't bear the thought of dragging you down with me." I crossed the room in 2 strides, taking her face in my hands. "Listen to me, Harper Rogers. You are not dragging me anywhere. I'm right where I want to be." Our lips met in a fierce kiss, pouring all our fears and hopes into that single moment of connection. The drive to the station was tense. I could feel the weight of unspoken words hanging between us. As I pulled into the parking lot, Harper squeezed my hand. "Be careful today," she said softly. "I know your colleagues aren't exactly thrilled about us." I brought her hand to my lips, kissing her knuckles. "Let them talk. I'm not ashamed of loving you." The moment I walked into the station, I could feel the shift in atmosphere. Conversations hushed, eyes darted away. I held my head high, refusing to let their judgment affect me. "Johnson," Chief Perry's voice called out. "My office, now?" I steeled myself, following her into the small room that suddenly felt claustrophobic. "Close the door," she said, her expression unreadable. As I sat down, Chief Perry leaned forward, her eyes boring into mine. "Luna, I've known you for years. You're one of the best damn firefighters I've ever worked with. But this thing with the gallery curator, it's causing problems." I opened my mouth to protest, but she held up a hand. "I'm not finished. Some of the guys are questioning your judgment. They're worried you're too close to this case, that your personal involvement might be clouding your perspective." "Chief, I'm not asking you to end your relationship," she continued, her voice softening slightly. "But I need to know that you can remain objective. Can you do that, Luna?" I met her gaze steadily. "Yes, ma'am, I can." She nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Good. Because I'm assigning you to lead the final investigation into the gallery fire. I trust you'll follow the evidence wherever it leads." My heart raced as I left her office. This was it, the chance to clear Harper's name once and for all. But what if the evidence led somewhere I wasn't prepared to go? The day dragged on, filled with paperwork and sidelong glances from my colleagues. By the time I clocked out, I was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. I drove to Harper's apartment on autopilot, my mind whirling with the implications of my new assignment. As I knocked on her door, I steeled myself for the conversation ahead. Harper opened the door, her face lighting up at the sight of me. But her smile faltered as she took in my expression. "What's wrong?" she asked, pulling me inside. I took a deep breath, leading her to the couch. "Harper, there's something I need to tell you." As I explained the situation, I watched a myriad of emotions play across her face: hope, fear, uncertainty. "So, you'll be investigating me?" she asked, her voice small. I took her hands in mine. "I'll be investigating the truth, and I promise you, Harper, I will find it." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I trust you, Luna, more than anyone." We spent the evening in each other's arms, talking about everything and nothing. As night fell, our kisses grew more urgent, hands exploring familiar curves with renewed desperation. Later, as we lay tangled in sheets and moonlight, Harper traced patterns on my skin. "Luna?" she whispered. "No matter what happens, thank you, for believing in me, for loving me." I pulled her closer, kissing her forehead. "Always, Harper. Always." As I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were standing on the edge of a precipice. The truth was out there, waiting to be uncovered, and I prayed that when it came to light, it wouldn't tear us apart. Because I knew, with every fiber of my being, that I couldn't lose Harper. Not now, not ever. Whatever storm was coming, we would weather it together. We had to. The investigation consumed my days and haunted my nights. Every lead I followed, every piece of evidence I uncovered, seemed to raise more questions than answers. I pored over financial records, interviewed witnesses, and re-examined the fire scene countless times, desperate for something, anything, that would exonerate Harper. But as the weeks wore on, a gnawing doubt began to creep into my mind. What if I was wrong? What if my love for Harper had blinded me to the truth? I pushed the thoughts aside, focusing on the facts. The fire had started in the gallery's storage room, where the most valuable pieces were kept. The sprinkler system had been manually disabled, and the security footage from that night was mysteriously corrupted. One rainy afternoon, as I sat at my desk surrounded by stacks of files, Jake approached me cautiously. "Luna," he said, his voice uncharacteristically serious. "I think I found something you need to see." He handed me a USB drive, his expression grim. "It's security footage from a convenience store across the street from the gallery. The night of the fire." My heart raced as I plugged in the drive. The grainy footage showed a figure in a hooded jacket entering the gallery through a side door, just minutes before the fire alarm went off. "Can we enhance this?" I asked, leaning closer to the screen. Jake nodded, tapping a few keys. The image zoomed in, and my blood ran cold. The figure's face was partially obscured, but there was no mistaking that profile, those green eyes. It was Harper. I felt the world tilt beneath me. This couldn't be happening. There had to be an explanation. "Luna," Jake said gently, placing a hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry, I know how much she means to you." I shrugged off his touch, grabbing my jacket. "I need to talk to her." The drive to Harper's apartment was a blur. My mind raced, trying to come up with explanations, excuses, anything that could make sense of what I'd seen. When Harper opened the door, her smile faded as she took in my expression. "Luna, what's wrong?" I brushed past her into the apartment, my heart pounding. "We need to talk, Harper, now." She followed me to the living room, confusion and concern etched on her face. "You're scaring me. What's going on?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "There's new evidence in the investigation. Security footage from the night of the fire." Harper's brow furrowed. "But I thought all the footage was corrupted?" "Not all of it," I said, watching her reaction carefully. "We found footage from a store across the street. It shows someone entering the gallery just before the fire started." She paled, her hands trembling slightly. "And what does that mean?" I closed my eyes, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "It was you, Harper. The footage shows you entering the gallery that night." The silence that followed was deafening. When I opened my eyes, Harper was staring at me, her expression a mix of shock and something else I couldn't quite place. "That's impossible," she whispered. "I wasn't there. I was home all night." I wanted to believe her. Gosh, how I wanted to believe her. But the evidence was damning. "Then explain it to me," I pleaded. "Help me understand, because right now, it looks like you set that fire." Harper sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. I can't explain it. But Luna, you have to believe me. I would never do something like that." I knelt in front of her, taking her hands in mine. "Then tell me the truth, Harper, all of it. Because I can't help you if you're not honest with me." She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. I knew about the embezzlement. I didn't participate, but I suspected what was happening. I was going to report it, but then... "Then what?" I pressed, my heart breaking with every word. "They threatened me," she whispered. "Said they'd ruin me if I talked. I was scared, Luna. I didn't know what to do." I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she was being framed. Maybe this was all part of a larger conspiracy. "Who threatened you, Harper? We can protect you. We can." But she cut me off, shaking her head. "You don't understand. It's bigger than you think. Powerful people are involved. If I talk." She trailed off, her eyes darting to the window as if expecting someone to be watching. I stood up, pacing the room. My mind raced, trying to reconcile the woman I loved with the mounting evidence against her. "Harper," I said finally, turning to face her, "I need you to be completely honest with me. Did you have anything to do with that fire?" She met my gaze, her green eyes shimmering with tears. "Luna, I swear on my life I did not set that fire, but there's more to the story. Things I haven't told you, things I'm afraid to tell you." I felt a glimmer of hope, mixed with a growing sense of dread. "Then tell me now, all of it, because I can't keep defending you if you're hiding things from me." Harper took a shaky breath, seeming to steel herself. "Okay, but Luna, once I tell you this, there's no going back. Are you sure you want to know?" I nodded, my heart pounding. "I need to know the truth, Harper, no matter what it is." As Harper began to speak, unraveling a tale of corruption, blackmail, and deadly secrets, I felt the ground shifting beneath my feet once again. With every revelation, I realized that this case, and our relationship, was far more complex than I had ever imagined. By the time she finished, the sun had set, casting long shadows across the room. I sat in stunned silence, trying to process everything I'd heard. "Luna?" Harper's voice was barely a whisper. "Say something, please." I looked at her, this woman I thought I knew so well, and realized we were standing at a crossroads. The choices we made next would change everything. "I need time," I said, finally standing up. "Time to think, to process all of this." Harper nodded, her expression a mix of fear and resignation. "I understand, but Luna, whatever you decide, know that I love you. That's the one thing in all of this that's absolutely true." As I walked out of her apartment that night, my mind reeling and my heart aching, I knew that nothing would ever be the same. The truth was out there, waiting to be uncovered, and I was determined to find it, no matter the cost. Because in the end, it wasn't just about clearing Harper's name anymore. It was about uncovering the truth, no matter where it led, even if it meant losing everything and everyone I loved in the process. The next few weeks were a blur of sleepless nights and caffeine-fueled days. I threw myself into the investigation with renewed vigor, determined to uncover the truth that Harper had hinted at. Every lead, no matter how small, was pursued relentlessly. My colleagues at the station watched me with a mix of concern and suspicion. I could feel their eyes on me, hear their whispers when they thought I wasn't listening, but I didn't care. I had a mission, and nothing was going to stop me. It was Jake who finally cornered me in the locker room, his face etched with worry. "Luna, you need to slow down," he said, blocking my path. "You're running yourself into the ground." I tried to brush past him, but he stood firm. "I'm fine, Jake, I just need to." "No," he interrupted, his voice unusually stern. "You're not fine. You haven't been fine since this whole mess started. Talk to me, Luna. What's really going on?" Maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe I just couldn't keep it bottled up anymore. But suddenly I found myself spilling everything. Harper's revelations, the web of corruption, my own conflicted feelings. Jake listened in stunned silence, his eyes widening with each new detail. When I finally finished, he let out a long, low whistle. "Damn, Luna. That's heavy stuff. What are you going to do?" I leaned against the lockers, suddenly feeling the weight of it all. "I don't know, but I can't just let this go. There are people out there, powerful people, who think they're above the law. I have to do something." Jake nodded, a determined glint in his eye. "Well, you're not doing it alone. I've got your back, partner." With Jake's help, the investigation took on new life. We dug deeper, followed leads that I'd previously overlooked. And slowly, piece by piece, the puzzle began to come together. It was a crisp autumn morning when we finally got the break we needed. An anonymous tip led us to a storage unit on the outskirts of town. Inside, we found a treasure trove of evidence, financial records, emails, even a copy of the missing security footage from the night of the fire. As we pored over the documents, a chilling picture emerged. The gallery had been at the center of a massive money laundering operation, with ties to some of the city's most prominent figures. Harper's boss hadn't just been embezzling funds. He'd been cleaning dirty money for a criminal syndicate. And Harper had been caught in the middle, a pawn in a game much larger than she realized. With our newfound evidence, things moved quickly. Arrests were made, including several high-ranking officials. The media frenzy was intense, with reporters camped outside the station day and night. Through it all, I hadn't spoken to Harper. Part of me was afraid of what I might say, of the emotions that might spill out if I saw her. But as the day of the trial approached, I knew I couldn't put it off any longer. I found her in her apartment, surrounded by packed boxes. She looked up as I entered, her eyes red-rimmed but determined. "Luna," she breathed, taking a step towards me before hesitating. I wasn't sure if I'd see you before the trial." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I'm here to tell you that you're going to be okay. The evidence we found, it clears you of any wrongdoing. You were a victim in all of this, Harper." Relief washed over her face, followed quickly by concern. "And you? Are you okay?" I managed a small smile. "I'm getting there. It's been a lot to process." Harper nodded, biting her lip. "Luna, I know I hurt you. I should have been honest from the beginning. I was just so scared, and I didn't want to drag you into this mess. I know, I said softly. I understand why you did what you did. But Harper, we can't go back to how things were. Too much has happened. Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded bravely. I know, I hope that someday you can forgive me. I stepped forward, taking her hand in mine. I already have, Harper, but forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. We both need time to heal, to figure out who we are after all of this. She squeezed my hand, a sad smile on her face. You're right. As always. We stood there for a moment, the air thick with unspoken words and bittersweet memories. Finally, I cleared my throat. The trial starts tomorrow. Are you ready? Harper took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. As ready as I'll ever be. Will you be there? I nodded. Every step of the way. I promised I'd see this through, and I meant it. The next morning, as we walked into the courthouse together, flashbulbs popping and reporters shouting questions, I felt a strange sense of calm. Whatever happened in that courtroom, whatever the future held, I knew we had done the right thing. As Harper took the stand, her voice steady as she recounted her story, I felt a surge of pride. She had been through hell, but she had come out stronger. We both had. The trial lasted for days, each revelation more shocking than the last. I testified about the investigation, laying out the evidence we had uncovered. As I spoke, I could feel the weight of the past months lifting from my shoulders. When the verdict was finally read, guilty on all counts for the true perpetrators, and a full exoneration for Harper, the courtroom erupted in chaos. But amidst the shouting and the celebrations, Harper's eyes found mine across the room. In that moment, no words were needed. We had weathered the storm together, uncovered the truth, and come out the other side. And while our relationship might never be the same, the bond we shared was unbreakable. As we left the courthouse, surrounded by a sea of reporters and well-wishers, Harper leaned in close. Thank you, she whispered, her breath warm against my ear, for everything. I squeezed her hand, a bittersweet smile on my face. Always, Harper, always. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in months, I felt hope. We had fought for the truth, and we had won. And whatever came next, I knew we would face it with the same determination and courage that had brought us this far. Because sometimes, the greatest love stories aren't about happily ever after. They're about two people fighting side by side for what's right, no matter the cost. And in that fight, Harper and I had found something rare and precious, a bond that transcended romance, forged in the fires of adversity and tempered by unwavering trust. As we stepped out into the sunlight, ready to face whatever came next, I knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter. For both of us. The months following the trial were a whirlwind of change. Harper threw herself into rebuilding her reputation and starting a new foundation dedicated to ethical art practices. I found myself promoted to fire captain, despite the initial resistance from some of my more conservative colleagues. We tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy, meeting for coffee or the occasional dinner. But there was always an undercurrent of tension, a reminder of everything we'd been through. One crisp autumn evening, I found myself standing outside Harper's new gallery. The grand opening was in full swing, the space filled with Raleigh's art elite. Through the window, I could see Harper in her element, charming patrons and explaining the significance of each piece. I hesitated at the door, unsure if I should go in. We hadn't spoken in weeks, both of us busy with our new responsibilities. But something pulled me forward, a need to see this chapter of her life, even if I wasn't a part of it. As I stepped inside, the noise of the crowd washed over me. Harper's eyes met mine across the room, and for a moment, it was like no time had passed at all. She excused herself from her conversation and made her way over to me. "Luna," she said, her voice warm, "I'm so glad you came." I managed a smile, trying to ignore the flutter in my chest. "Wouldn't miss it. This place is amazing, Harper. You've done an incredible job." She beamed, her eyes sparkling with pride. "Thank you. It's been a lot of work, but it feels good to be doing something positive again." We fell into an easy conversation, catching up on the past few weeks. As we talked, I couldn't help but notice how much Harper had changed. There was a new confidence in her posture, a clarity in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Listen," Harper said suddenly, her tone growing serious. I've been thinking a lot about us, about everything that happened. I tensed, bracing myself for what was coming. Oh? She took a deep breath. I know things can never go back to how they were, but I was hoping, maybe we could try to start over, as friends? The word friends hung in the air between us, heavy with implications. Part of me wanted to say yes, to grab onto this olive branch with both hands. But another part, the part that still ached when I thought of our shared past, hesitated. I don't know, Harper, I said slowly. A lot has changed. We've both changed. She nodded, a flicker of disappointment crossing her face. I understand. I miss you, Luna. Having you in my life, in whatever capacity, means more to me than I can express. Before I could respond, we were interrupted by a tall, elegant woman who swept Harper into a hug. Darling, the mayor just arrived. You simply must come and say hello, the woman said, her voice dripping with honey. Harper gave me an apologetic look. Duty calls. We'll talk more later? I nodded, watching as she was whisked away into the crowd. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of small talk and champagne. I found myself observing Harper from afar, noting how easily she moved through this world that had once nearly destroyed her. As the night wound down, I slipped out onto the gallery's balcony, needing a moment of quiet. The city stretched out before me, a tapestry of lights and shadows. Penny, for your thoughts? I turned to see Harper standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the warm light from inside. Just thinking about how much has changed, I said, offering her a small smile. She came to stand beside me, our shoulders barely touching. Yeah, it's been quite a journey, hasn't it? We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the sounds of the party fading into the background. Harper, I said finally, turning to face her. I think I'd like to try. Being friends, I mean. Her face lit up, hope blooming in her eyes. Really? I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. Really? It won't be easy, and there's a lot we'll need to work through. But I miss you too, and I think we're both better people for having known each other. Harper's hand found mine, squeezing gently. That's all I can ask for, a chance. As we stood there, the city spread out before us. I felt a sense of bittersweet acceptance wash over me. This wasn't the happily ever after I'd once dreamed of. There was no magical reconciliation, no passionate declarations of undying love. Instead, we had something different, something born of shared struggles and hard-won wisdom. A friendship forged in fire, tempered by truth, and strengthened by the knowledge that we had seen each other at our best and worst. The future stretched out before us, uncertain but full of possibility. And as Harper smiled at me, her eyes reflecting the city lights, I realized that sometimes the most beautiful endings aren't endings at all. They're new beginnings, disguised as goodbyes. As we made our way back inside, rejoining the ebb and flow of the party, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sadness for the love story that might have been. But mixed with that sadness was a sense of hope, a quiet certainty that whatever came next, we would face it with the same courage and determination that had brought us this far. Because in the end, isn't that what true love is? Not just passion and romance, but the willingness to stand by someone, to fight for them, even when the fairy tale ending slips away? Harper and I might not have gotten our happily ever after, but we got something real, something lasting. A bond that transcended romance, a connection forged in adversity and strengthened by time. And as I watched her move through the crowd, her head held high and her spirit unbroken, I knew that this messy, complicated, beautiful friendship was its own kind of love story. One without a neat ending, but with endless possibilities for new chapters. As I left the gallery that night, stepping out into the cool Raleigh air, I felt a sense of closure. The story of Luna and Harper, star-crossed lovers, had come to an end, but the story of Luna and Harper, friends and allies, was just beginning. And who knows? Maybe that story would turn out to be even more beautiful than the one we'd originally imagined.